Hi Mason, how you doing, man? You okay?
Yeah, I'm all good, man. Thanks for having
Good.
me.
No problem at all. No problem at all. Obviously you've had some pretty big news over the last couple of weeks. You know what I mean? The UFC BJJ title. But before we get on to that, I wanted to speak about a few things that have happened sort of a bit further in the past for you because I noticed obviously you had runs at Gi Worlds, at purple, brown belt, that kind of thing. But you've never actually made a run at Gi Worlds since sort of like hitting the big time, 4 or 5 years ago. I wanted to ask,
Yeah.
was there any particular reason for that, or is it just never really lined up?
Yeah, the first year that I was a black belt, I competed that's the year that I competed in the Brasileiro and I won. So I would have had a really good seating for the worlds. And so I was considering doing it, but at the same time, like honestly, I didn't even want to do the Brasileiro. I didn't want to compete at all in the gi anymore. Mainly just financially, it didn't really make sense because I was already doing a lot of paid super fights at that time. And obviously like when you go and compete in the Brasileiro or the European, I mean, it's a great experience, but you're coming out of pocket for your flight and your hotel, and you got to go early and acclimate, and you're not really going to get paid much if you win. So I didn't even really want to do the Brasileiro. Thank God Kyle convinced me to do the Brasileiro. Um, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have any gi black belt titles. I wouldn't have the Brasileiro. I wouldn't have the European if it wasn't for Kyle Terra. He's the one that was pushing me to continue competing in the gi. Even now, he just texted me 2 days ago and he's trying to get me to do like the crown in the gi or something like that. I'm like, bro, I don't want to compete in the gi anymore. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Uh, the first year I won the Brasileiro, that was the year of ADCC, right? So I didn't want to do a training camp in the gi. I think what's the world's like the end of May and then ADCC is the end of August. I wanted to just keep the momentum going all year for ADCC. That was my mindset.
Yeah.
Um, and then I was planning on winning ADCC and retiring. That didn't pan out. I lost in the second round to Egan O'Flanagan. So I was like, fuck, I guess I got to keep competing. Uh, and then the next year I was thinking, okay, well, I wanted to be like a world champion, like a real world champion, not like, I won purple belt worlds and brown belt worlds, but I didn't win ADCC and I didn't win black belt worlds. So I was like, okay, well, I screwed up at, can I cuss by the way?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I fucked up at ADCC 2022. So now I'm not a real world champion. So then that's when I was going to compete in the gi at black belt, the gi worlds. So that's the whole reason I went to Europeans in 2023 was because I wanted to get that high ranking again. I mean, it's super important to come in as a high seed because then even if you lose, at least you can get like a silver medal or a bronze. But if you come in as a low seed and you might, lose to the best guy in the first round, and then it's a complete waste, right? Anyway, so I won the Europeans and I got third in the absolute in 2023. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna do worlds now. So I was doing the whole training camp for worlds, and then I just got hurt. I popped one of my ribs pretty bad, and I was out for like 2 or 3 months, miss worlds. Um, so then after that, I was kind of like not really motivated to ever do it again, especially when it's like you're doing a full training camp or a tournament, knowing you're not gonna get paid, knowing you're gonna have to pay out of your own pocket. It's like at least in a paid super fight, if you get hurt in the training camp, like you got hurt like trying to compete for money. So it was a
Yeah.
little disheartening.
So can I ask, because you mentioned something sort of like in passing there, but you were actually considering retiring that would have been ADCC 2022 then, was it?
Oh, every time I'm in training camp, I'm considering retiring. Every single time. Every single
So
time.
no matter how well the match goes afterwards, what sort of brings you back into it then?
No, because the anxiety from the competition is gone. And then you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like compete again for sure. But when you're in the training camp and you're like nervous for like a big match or something, and you're training super hard and your body's all injured and broken, and then I have Kyle freaking yelling at me every training session. I'm like, oh my God, I'm never doing this again. And then I do the competition, I either win or lose. And then I'm like, ah, yeah, I'll book another one.
No, I think that's a not that common because I don't think people consider retirement that often, but I think that's a common experience, like not really enjoying the build up to a major event. But once you go out there, it's kind of over and done with then, isn't it?
Yeah, to be honest, like I used to overtrain myself a lot more. Um the last the last few training camps that I've had, I feel like I did a lot better job of peaking myself, and I felt a lot better mentally because when you're like super super overtrained, it's really bad for your like obviously it's bad for your body, but it's bad for your mental health too. And your cortisol levels are just super high. You start getting really low quality sleep, and I think all those things are a factor in why you just like feel so miserable. So the last few training camps, I think I've done a lot better job at like peaking myself. I do a lot more strength conditioning now, so my body's a lot healthier. Um, so I haven't been feeling like that lately. Like at no point in time have I thought like, oh, this is going to be my last match in like the last year. But before I used to like every time.
Nice. No, it's good to hear that you've sort of gotten over that pre-competition difficulty then.
It's still there, but I just manage it a lot better. And I'm older too. I'm more experienced, so I'm a little more used to it. And now, yeah, I would say it's still there. I just manage it better.
So if you don't mind me asking, then what do you do sort of like in your pre-competition build-up to manage that kind of like anxiety leading into the event?
Man, I try to go outside every day. That's one thing. It sounds super like kind of stupid, but like as a jiu-jitsu athlete, like we're inside a lot. And a lot of the, younger athletes you see are just they train and then they're just on their phone all day. Like, man, you need to go outside and touch grass, literally. Get outside. I try to like go to the beach and jump in the ocean at least once a week. Just a lot of those like little things, not being on my phone. Just stay off your phone for a few hours and you'll feel great.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a common thing like across any sport or anyone really that, time outside and sort of like living in the real world kind of thing is always
Hmm.
beneficial for your mental health. And can I ask then, when you say about like the gi events obviously generally not being paid at all, or if they are, it's only winners. When you mentioned the crown, then would you not consider doing like a gi super fight event like that, or like BJJ stars often do like paid super fights in the gi?
Yeah, so now I'm exclusive with the UFC.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I would. It would just be tough because now I feel like now I'm so much better no gi than I am in the gi because I've had a full 2.5 years that I had. The last time I competed in the gi was January 2023. So I haven't done any real training in the gi since that time. And I literally I just taught a gi seminar yesterday and I trained with some pretty good like local black belts. And yeah, I realized that like I suck in the gi now compared to like, you know, how I am in no gi. Like I was struggling. It was tough. I came home and fell asleep right away on the couch for like 2 hours. I was so dead.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you don't use it, you lose it, don't you? You know what I mean? Like if I think that
Yeah.
happens to anyone when they specialize in gi or no gi, it's always difficult at first to sort of transition over. And then when you talk about the UFC BJJ being the exclusive contract now as well, I don't know if you're able to say, but do they offer the same sort of carve outs that One Championship do for major ADCC events, that sort of thing, or is it solely exclusive to UFC BJJ now?
Um, there's nothing that's black and white. Honestly, I have a really good relationship with Claudia and Steven, who like run the show. And I honestly think if there was something that I really, really wanted to do, um, you know, there could be a discussion about it. That's the vibe I get from working with them. Um, I don't know if that would be ADCC or like an IBJJF. Like if I went to them and said, "Hey, like I really want to compete in the IBJJF Worlds in the gi," I don't think it's going to take away from anything that I'm doing with you because it's a different sport. It's in the gi instead of no gi. I really want to get a black belt world title. If I came to them and said that, I truly think they would probably be like, yeah, you can do it, even though
Nice.
they don't have to. I think so. I'm not sure though. But with that being said, I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to. There's no like, I don't really care that much about having that like title on my resume of being like, oh, I'm a IBJJF champion or ADCC champion. At this point, I'm just trying to get, the most marketing that I can and capitalize and make as much money as I can because I've been in this sport for a long time and it's very common that like no one in jiu-jitsu was making any money. So now that I have the ability to actually make good money, I want to really capitalize because I'm 32 now. So I don't know how long I'm going to be able to like ride this out. I could tear my ACL tomorrow and that's it. A lot of 32-year-olds don't come back from an ACL tear. So I just want to capitalize. I would prefer not to do any other competitions, honestly.
No, that's fair enough, and I think that's the from what you hear from people that have been exclusive or are exclusive with organizations like the UFC or even one championship as well. A lot of the sort of like the debate, the back and forth kind of thing is primarily around like competition opportunity versus the, like you said, like the monetary side of it, and then obviously the promotional side as well. So you made that decision, obviously, must have been a couple of months ago now, I'm assuming, before you had the title fight. Was that the main sort of like driving goal, was to sort of like secure you financially, and then obviously the sort of promotional aspect of the UFC as well?
Well, in the last like let's say year or two, I had only been competing already for the UFC before I was even exclusive. And that's just because like I don't know, I've always had a really good relationship with them ever since Submission Underground. I always had good opportunities for competition. The pay was always very good. So yeah, it was to me it was kind of like the only reason to not sign exclusive for me personally was CGI because like to me not signing exclusive to do ADCC wouldn't make sense or IBJJF. But like in the very beginning, whenever there was talks of the exclusivity, the first talks were that like you could do CGI, you could
Okay.
do maybe even ADCC. That was kind of like the early talks. And then later on, it became like you can't do anything else. You can only do the UFC BJJ. And that's where it was like a tough decision, I think, for a lot of people, because a lot of people wanted the chance to win the $1 million. But with that being said, my position that I'm in personally, I'm kind of like a lone wolf. Like I don't have a big team that's very well known. We have some guys that are up and coming, but we definitely don't have 5 guys that are like at the top right now at Kyo's gym. Um, it's pretty much I'm the only one that's actively competing in like that like top 5 ranked in the world right now. We have some other guys that are good and I think they have potential, but right now we don't have a good team to do CGI. So I think that's where I'm in a unique position where like the team event wasn't like a good thing for me personally. If it was an individual event, that would have potentially caused me to not be exclusive because then I would have a chance at $1 million.
Sure.
But to not take the deal that was a really, really good deal, just for a chance to be on like a random team, that I don't think would have been the smartest thing for me personally. So that's why
Yeah.
I ended up doing that.
Yeah, I think that's something that when like the jiu-jitsu community sort of at large talks about, exclusive contracts, the benefits, the positives and negatives and this sort of thing. That's something that I think gets lost a lot of the time, is that every athlete's in a different situation. So
Mhm.
what might be the right choice for you as an example might not be the right choice for Gordon Ryan, might not be the right choice for Craig or someone else. You know what I mean? It's going to be
Exactly.
there's going to be little different factors everywhere, really.
Yep, and those guys like Craig, I mean, he obviously has a bigger name than me and a bigger brand than me, and so whatever money they offered him wasn't worth it. But for me, what they offered me, like when I break down everything that's in the contract, everything that's there. It was, I mean, it was worth it. So I had to take it.
Yeah, and then you mentioned obviously like the relationship you've had with them through Submission Underground as well, and that was a similar kind of thing for you where you were competing for Submission Underground pretty much every single event for I think it must have been like a year or two, and then like you said, it's
Yeah.
been the same now with the UFC through the Fight Pass Invitational on this one. You've done I think like 4 or 5 events in the last year or so.
Yep.
So is that a big thing for you, sort of like finding somewhere that you like or someone that you like working with and just sticking with them for as long as you can kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that's important for everyone, whether it's whether it's MMA or jiu-jitsu. You need to find a promotion and build a relationship with them and do good business with them so that they want to build you and promote you as like one of their like pillars of their promotion. And that's just where I found myself with UFC. The same way that like the Rotolos are with one, or how Mikey was with one, like one was really like building Mikey beforehand, and now obviously the UFC is doing that as well. And you know, who's number one does that with like Mika Galvao, for example. He's like their guy. And so for me, it was just like UFC, they would treat me like I was their guy. So
Yeah.
then you know what I mean? When you're there and you're with the promotion that's, you know, taking care of you and they're paying you well, they're promoting you, and you're like one of their kind of like golden boys, you're just like, yeah, I feel like this is great. I want to definitely stay here and keep competing here, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's something that the sort of like annual events or even biannual with ADCC as well, they can't really offer that same sort of experience in fairness because at the end of the day, especially because it's with something like ADCC, obviously they have got to try at least to be as unbiased as they can, and they've got 100 competitors going out once every 2 years. You can't really favor anyone, or you shouldn't. And if they do, you know, I wouldn't agree with it personally. I know other people might say different, but yeah, ideally you want them to be as unbiased as possible. And then even with like CJI, same thing. If it's once a year, that's only a limited time that you can get that kind of promotional push. To be fair,
Yeah. So like the best thing, like everyone's different, right? Everyone's in a different position. So for like, let's say Mika Galvao, the worst thing that he could do is sign the deal with the UFC because he competes so often. He's doing Gi Worlds, Gi Pan Ams, Europeans, Brasileiros, like all the Grand Slam tournaments. He's doing ADCC. So he's already doing those 5 events. Plus, he's doing the super fights with who's number one, like maybe like 3 or 4 times a year. So he's competing, you know, 8 times a year. It wouldn't make sense for him to stop doing that to do, you know, 3 or 4 matches with UFC BJJ. So for someone like Mika that's super active and still wants to do the world's type tournaments, and wants to build their resume and build their legacy like that, he should keep doing what he's doing, obviously. But for someone like me that's like, you know, whatever titles I've got. I'm 32. I want to still keep competing at a high level, you know, 3, 4 times a year. Um, and when I do compete, I want to get a lot of exposure. I feel like it was kind of like a no-brainer for me personally.
yeah. To be fair, I think we're entering like a weird sort of like transitionary period of jiu-jitsu at the moment where the events like IBJJF Worlds and even ADCC to a certain extent as well are becoming, if you know, exclusive contracts sort of like pick up, sorry, as much as they have the opportunity to do so. You're seeing like those major events almost being like something that athletes would do early in their career and then build up to, like you said, eventually having the resume or the legacy that they've got and using that to sort of get big money matches where they can compete less but make potentially more money than they were in to begin with anyway.
Yeah, and look at this. Think about this concept here because you know, a lot of people will say the exclusive deals are bad for the sport because certain people won't be able to compete against each other. And like there's a point there, obviously. But for the athletes, just for the athletes, I don't think it would be a bad thing if, let's say there's 3 promotions. Let's say there's who's number one, there's UFC BJJ, and then there's ONE FC. Let's say if those 3 promotions do only exclusive deals where they're champions, they don't allow them to compete in ADCC or any of the big tournaments, right? So they're exclusive. Then you're going to have uh, essentially three champions in each weight class. And the champion for that promotion, let's just say that like, let's just take my weight class, for example. Let's say that it's Pedro Murillo for who's number one. It's me for UFC BJJ, and it's Giancarlo for like ONE FC, right? And let's say like we're the best 205ers in the world, but for 2 years we never compete against each other. And we just keep competing against like other guys that are in the top 10, and we keep winning and keep becoming champions. Now it's like you have three guys that are making six figures a year. They're getting built and marketed by that promotion as the best in the world. They're able to, sell out seminars, this and that, camps, and they're able to promote themselves as the best in the world. Now, even if those three don't compete against each other for 2 years, you now have three stars that are able to like monetize and make like 2, 3, 400K per year, because that like tournament is building them as like the champion, right? Whereas if the best are just competing against the best all the time, and there's just like, sometimes there's not even one guy that's the best. Sometimes everyone's just kind of beating each other. Then it's like that it's kind of hurting everyone's marketing, because then no one's really like the best. No one's really like untouchable, yada, yada, yada. And then like eventually the contracts are going to run out. And then it's like, let's say that UFC wants to sign Pedro because they want to have a big match with me because he's like the champ and I'm the champ here. Now Pedro is going to be able to use that negotiating power, and then he can go back to who's number one and be like, yo, UFC's offering me 100 grand for this match with Mason. And then who's number one's going to be like, no, you're our champion. We're going to pay you even more. And so I think for the athletes, the exclusive thing isn't necessarily like a bad thing, because you can use it and leverage it to get more money from the other promotions.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point to make because it's something that people are overlooking a little bit. I will say I think I do understand, like you said, there is an argument to make that if the best don't compete against each other, then the sport sort of like loses something a little bit. But what I will say is that I think jiu-jitsu is a unique sport in the sense that people can compete so often that when you look at like the sort of like legendary rivalries over the last like 20, 30 years, in boxing or MMA, you talk about two, maybe three fights. That's
Yeah.
usually all it is. In
Mm-hmm.
jiu-jitsu, guys have what, like 10 matches against each other over their career, sometimes more, you know what I mean? It's not
The
it's
question is that good or bad for someone's marketing?
yeah, exactly. And I think it's we'll see how it pans out. It's kind of too early to really predict, but yeah, that is definitely a change that I think is probably on the horizon now, that we're going to see competitors, like you said, like the very, very top, like two or three, probably only having maybe two, three matches against each other over their career and maybe like a couple of years in between, rather than before, they'd fight at Euros in January, Worlds at the end of the year, and then maybe ADCC in a couple of months later. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's like, as far as like for entertainment, I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. I think it's better to have a big buildup. You know what I mean? Like, let's just say me and whoever, Giancarlo, are both like the champions. Like, he's the champion of ONE FC, I'm the champion of UFC. And let's say we retain the belts for like a year, 2 years, and then everyone's talking about how we need to compete against each other. And it's going to be a big buildup, as opposed to like, oh yeah, like, Mason beat him in January when they grappled, but then Giancarlo beat him in March. Like, they're going to have a third match. No one really cares. There's no buildup. So I think it's good. I think there could be a lot of buildup. And then again, like, I think it's going to give us as athletes more negotiating power. Um, Especially imagine if I'm the UFC BJJ champ for, the whole time period of my contract. And then let's say my contract ends and I'm still the champ. Now, ONE FC has a huge motivation to bring me over. Who's number one has a huge motivation to bring me over. UFC has a huge motivation to keep me. So all that's going to do is increase my negotiating power. So I think if the athletes use it correctly, I think it can be a good thing.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And I think we do have an example already, or a handful of examples of that kind of like slow build up to a rematch or a new match that does get a lot of hype. Like you see it with Roger Gracie and Buchecha when they had their first match, and then the second one was like 4 years later, I want to say, but it's a couple of years in between. And then when it was
Yeah.
announced, it was massive. And then same with Gordon and Philippe when they fought like the third time or fourth time. The same process, you know what I mean? It was such a long build up to that. I think it's the third match I'm talking about, the one at who's number one.
Hmm.
Um, there was such a long build up towards it that, like I said, that was kind of the biggest match of the year, kind of thing.
Yep. That was probably one of the biggest matches of all time. I remember the build up to that. Yeah, so it's like if you're competing against someone 5 times a year, there's not going to be that like big build up. I think these big buildups are going to help to bring more money to the sport for sure. More money to the athletes at least.
Hopefully, yeah. And I think that's something that, like I said, only time will tell. It's too early to sort of guarantee which way it's going to go, but there's definitely like positives and negatives to everything, really, isn't there? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, right now my main concern is just capitalizing on I've been living the life of a jiu-jitsu bum for long enough and I want to capitalize. I want to, make some good money while I can. I want to invest in my future, set myself up for later on in life. And I only have a short window to do that, so I have to make sure that I'm making all the right decisions.
Yeah, for sure. And can I ask as well? Obviously, you've had the one title fight now. You beat David Garmo, pretty much a flawless performance, really. Is there anyone that you're either sort of like hoping to get booked against next, or anyone that you've got your eye on?
Yeah, after my match, I called for 3 people. I called for Hulk, Devontae, or Pedro Machado. So I told the UFC I'm fine with either of the 3, but I would love Machado because he's the only one out of those 3 that has beaten me before. Um, in I forgot what year it was. It was my last year at brown belt right before I got promoted to black belt. I won the worlds in my division. He won the worlds in his division, and then we ended up meeting each other in the finals of the absolute. And he tapped me, and I was really pissed because I was really expected to double gold that year. Um, and the same thing actually happened to me at purple belt. At purple belt, I won my division, and then I got tapped in the finals of the absolute by Roberto Jimenez. And then, the same thing happened to me at brown belt. I won my division. I got tapped in the finals of the absolute by Pedro Machado. So I would love to get that one back, especially because I think that I'll have the advantage in no gi because the first match was in the gi. So that's what I'm hoping for. He had a match on UFC BJJ 1 and he beat the guy, tapped the guy. He looked good. So I would love to get the rematch with him for sure. But if not, it can be whoever. When I look at the list of like the top 205ers in the world, I'm not really too concerned with any of them. So
So there's one thing that is interesting, I think, is that Nicky Rodriguez obviously generally does over 99 kilos, but for CJI, he made it down to under 99. And personally, I don't think he looked that much smaller, so I don't know what he walks around at, but it seems like that's a weight cut that is doable for him. And obviously, you had that match against him. Was it last year now or the beginning of the year, I think?
yeah, it was
Um,
yeah, last year.
is that a match you would want to get back as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would definitely love to do it at 205. I think he can make it. I think he walks around like maybe 5, 10 pounds heavier than me. So I think he can make it. And I think it would be a lot better for me because when we had our match at heavyweight, I was so concerned with getting bigger and I think I was just like a little fat and slow and my cardio was not great. So I think if we had the match at 205, it would be a lot more of an advantage for me, if anything.
So that's an interesting point as well, because you've sort of moved through weight classes a couple of times, obviously up and down. Do you find that there's a weight class that suits you best? Is it 205?
I think right now 205 is the best weight class for me by far because if you look at like if you just look at the top like 5 205ers in the world compared to the top 5 heavyweights in the world, I think that you would put me as the favorite in pretty much every match at 205 and you would probably put me as the underdog in a lot of the matches at heavyweight. I mean heavyweight is, you know, Victor Hugo, Luke Griffith, who I do have a win over him. Filipina, Kainan. Like, it's just freaking heavyweight is just murder is real right now. And I'm just a little too small, you know? Like, Victor's 265 shredded, like muscular.
Yeah, no, he's probably I would say he's probably the biggest heavyweight, and it doesn't help that even though he's that size, he still moves like someone like half the size as well.
Yeah, super annoying and has like a great guard too and is like very technical. So yeah, I think 205 is where I'm definitely gonna stay for now. And who knows what will happen in the future. Like maybe I'll defend the 205-pound title a few times and maybe there'll be a heavyweight champ that's very dominant and we can do kind of like a champ versus champ type of thing. Um, but just for like regular matches, I don't think there's any reason for me to compete against like any of the top five heavyweights. I think it just for me personally makes more sense to just be dominant in my weight class and stop like giving up such a big weight advantage.
So when you have done that in the past, then, and like you said, given up a bit of weight, you mentioned like trying to put on size yourself. Did you find that sort of helped against bigger competitors, or did it end up sort of slowing you down and not maybe taking away some of the advantages that you would have had elsewhere?
Yeah, there's like a point of no return for me where like I feel I feel like the heavier I get, the worse I get for sure. Just because like my cardio has always been like a good tool for me. And a lot of the time I'm able to like come back in the end of matches, especially like against the heavyweights. Sometimes they're just so much stronger than me that they'll get ahead early in the match and then I'll come back later in the match. And it always makes for really exciting matches too, which is cool. But I kind of lose that ability when I get past a certain point. So for me right now, I've been trying to just keep my weight under 220 and I feel good. I think that that's where like that's the heaviest I should be when I'm competing. Whenever I was competing against Nicky Rod, I woke up in the morning at like 225 and it doesn't sound like that much, but it makes a big difference as opposed to waking up at like, 217, 218. Those like 7, 8 pounds makes a really big difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's the same for anyone in any weight class. There's always going to be like a tipping point in either direction where they cut too much weight or they bulk up too much, and it's different for everyone, isn't it? It depends on what your like frame I can actually handle, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's just even though I know that, it's hard for me. Like I'm just a fat boy at heart. And it's hard for me to like get super locked in and be like weighing out my food and being super responsible with my diet unless I have the fear of like that I have to make weight. Once I have that fear knowing like okay, I got to make 205, I don't know what it is. It sends me into I get super locked in with my diet. I start weighing out everything, like everything's super on point. I don't do cheat meals. But when I'm competing at heavyweight, I'm just like so like nonchalant about it. Like I still eat healthy, but I'm just not as like dialed in with weighing things out.
So, do you think you're going to end up being one of those like old school wrestling coaches then that as soon as they retire from the sport, they just get pretty fat?
Yeah, the good thing is that I'm really like vain, so I don't want to let myself get too fat, definitely. Especially, like, if I end up running a jiu-jitsu school and being, like, a head coach, I think that it's important that you don't just, like, get super fat or people are gonna kinda, like, think you're a slob, right? So, um, I think I'll be okay. I'll definitely, like, maybe get into some type of, like, fasting or something like that, or maybe just do, like, straight carnivore diet, and then, maybe just have, like, a cheat day where I really eat what I wanna eat. That I
Well, to
thought
be
about that a lot. I don't wanna get fat.
well, to be fair, you've got like a good kind of like role model in Kaio as well, because I mean he's been retired for a long time now and he's still absolutely shredded.
He's getting a little fat these days, yeah. I've been making fun of him. He's real
Um,
small, so if he puts on a little bit of weight, it shows, you know? He's been looking
yeah.
a little chubby these days. He calls me fat every single day. Even when I'm cutting weight and I'm, like, ripped with abs, he's like, "You're so fat, Mason. You're so fat." I'm like, "Alright, bro. Whatever."
That's pretty much everything I wanted to go through with you, though, Mason. I mean, is there anything else that you want to say, or anyone you want to give a shout out to, or anything like that?
Um, shout out to Moy Brand. Uh, yeah, not too much, man. Just out here doing jujitsu, living the life, you know? Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity with your platform, and, you're one of the OGs. You've been doing it for a while, so thanks for all the coverage and stuff that you've been giving to the sport. Us athletes, we really appreciate it.
No worries at all, man. Thanks very much. I appreciate that as well. Well, take care then. Have a nice evening, all right?
No, it's morning here, bro. It's 10 a.m.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You have a nice evening. I'll have a nice morning.
Nice one. Catch you later.
All right. Later.
Cheers.